Welcome into my vermicomposting kitchen. Today, I'd love to show you the brown ingredients that go into our vermicompost. So without further ado, let's jump right in. I've got 4 materials in front of us, and I'm going to be explaining what each of them are and what role they have in our vermicomposting setup as brown materials. So, the very first material is one that has been used commonly in a lot of vermicomposting setups, and that is this shredded cardboard. So this is just, again, cardboard boxes that I have gone and taken to a heavy-duty shredder, and that is a shredder that's able to handle usually about 25 to 30 sheets. And you can see it in my hand. This is about the size of the piece of the cardboard. So it cuts it down pretty nicely. And this is something that I've used in the European nightcrawler bins that I had and that I recently harvested. So this was the brown material that I primarily used there. One of the main pros of using cardboard is the accessibility. It can be found just about anywhere, usually for free. If you don't have boxes come into your house, I'm sure that you could find them out for free on the curb. And that makes it cheap as well and inexpensive. And really the main cost that you would have to put in, the main costs would be getting a shredder that's heavy duty enough. And as you can tell, the volume of this is pretty significant. This is not a small amount, and I have another identical bag. So the cost of the shredder, and then obviously the time to actually shred the cardboard. Another pro is that cardboard is highly absorbent, so you can soak it for a good bit, and it'll really take in a good bit of water to add moisture to your bin. And it can also be used dry to take away moisture from your bin. So if your bin is too wet, which I've had on some occasions, you can just take this cardboard and just dump it right in there and mix it in, and it will really help to absorb and soak up the moisture. So it's really good for controlling the moisture of your bin. It can really hold a lot of moisture. So that is cardboard. I'm going to come back to this one to discuss its use in my bins moving forward. The next material that I'd like us to look at here, the next brown material here, is, and you might be confused because there are some leaves in there, but the next material is wood chips. And wood chips are a really nice material. I really like them. One of the big pros of wood chips is just how firm they are, how they really help with the porosity of the vermicompost, which helps to keep it nice and aerobic. They can also absorb some moisture, and using wood chips can help to promote fungal growth in your bin. So it's nice for that as well, so that you can have, in some cases, you may want a fungal dominant vermicompost, and that's largely going to happen when you have a heavy amount of brown materials. And as far as some long-lasting brown materials, wood chips really fit the bill. And they're also going to, typically, if you find them, or when you get them, they're also going to be loaded with natural microbes on them already. They're probably going to have fungi and all of that on there. And if you leave them outside, they will definitely draw in and hold fungal spores and that kind of thing. So it's really nice for having a natural brown material. Helps with the porosity, and yeah, it's just overall a nice material. I've mixed this into my red wiggler bins recently when I made that bin, and I do like to put it in my in the bottom, I like to put wood chips in the bottom of my bokashi bins so that where the drippings or the effluent gathers, the wood chips can really soak that in and then bring that into whatever worm bin I put those soaked chips into. So that's another material that I use. The third material that I'd like to go over is this coffee chaff, and this is more of a unique material. It's not one that I see used in a lot of places, but it is very lightweight. And if you have access to a coffee roaster, you can likely get this material for free because it doesn't really have a lot of people do not use this material, and it just ends up being a waste product. So I really enjoy the idea of being able to take something that was otherwise going to be waste and upcycling it, turning it into something that has value. The chaff, again, very light, very airy, and somewhat hydrophobic. It will break down in the worm bin when put with moisture, and I've really enjoyed it so far. I recently added it to the red wiggler bin, actually, just to try it out. Why not? No better way to find out than trying it, and so far it seems to be working a-okay. So that's coffee chaff. It's really nice and has small flakes, which is really good. Helps it to break down a little bit faster than, say, a wood chip, which can have a little bit more bulk to it. As you can see here, this is a regular sized wood chip, but it's going to take a while for that to break down. So there's a lot more substance to a wood chip than there would be to a flake of coffee chaff. So this is coffee chaff. I really enjoy this material. Again, this actually comes from the roasting of the coffee bean, which is the seed of the coffee fruit. So we take the coffee fruit and we extract the seeds, and those we know as coffee beans, but it's truly the seed of the plant. And when that is roasted, this is the outer layer of the coffee bean, and it just comes right off and it becomes a waste product. And the fourth material that we use in our vermicomposting setup is right here. Fall leaves. I absolutely love leaves for composting, and as you can see, I have it in this nice jute sack or burlap sack. And funnily enough, that sack actually comes from the same supplier who generously provides me with his coffee chaff. And so what I've done actually is I've taken leaves out of bags just like this, and then I have put them into this jute bag, which allows for better airflow, for better moisture penetration, and also allows for microbes to be able to get in, like spores of fungus, etc. And what that allows this to do is it allows it to break down into something called leaf mold. So usually my plan would be to set these leaves outside for about a year and let them break down, and then utilize them in my worm bin. But I can also use them just like this. I can use them dry as they are, and then just toss them in there and watch them break down. But I really enjoy fall leaves. One of the beautiful things about them is just how plentiful they can be. Look at that. All of that was got. All those black bags are full of leaves, and I had about 5 more that I've already put into bags just like this. And neighbors will just rake them up and put them on the curb. And so they are free. Someone else does the work to bag them, and I just drive through the neighborhood, see them, and go grab them. So they're really neat material. I enjoy them because they do break down into such rich material if you've seen this after a long period of time, it really does break down into a very fine, rich, earthy black material, which is just rich and full of nutrients. And it really helps to continue the cycle that God designed, right? Which is that trees, they photosynthesize, they feed a lot of that energy into the leaves, not all of it. A considerable amount actually goes to the roots as exudates, but that's a different story. So they feed those nutrients into the leaves, and in the fall time, the leaves of a deciduous tree are going to fall, and they actually help, as they break down, they contribute to adding nutrients back into the soil, the same soil that's going to feed that tree. So I think it's a really beautiful cycle that God has created. And it's one reason that I love using leaves like this. It's one reason that I love using the wood chips, but specifically the leaves in that regard. So, so going back to our 4 materials that we use, I mentioned to you that I would be coming back to the cardboard to discuss it. And of all of these materials, between the leaves, the wood chips, the chaff, and the cardboard and the chaff actually tend to be the more sterile, if you will. Now, obviously, they're not absolutely sterile, but they're not quite as just naturally covered with microbes. This is processed. Obviously, it's actually made from paper products put together, and then that cardboard that is processed. So it's not in its natural state, but it can be still utilized in vermicomposting. And then the chaff itself, obviously being the outer part of the seed that is then roasted, it doesn't have the same, it doesn't break down the same. I guess that's the best way to put it. It doesn't break down the same as wood chips or leaves do. But I do still enjoy using it. But with that being the case, I've introduced you to all 4 of these, and I want to share something with you. It's a little surprise, but I think I'm actually going to be moving away from using cardboard. So even though it is the most available, very easy to find in bulk, I think I'm going to try to move toward items, especially leaves and wood chips, that have a natural microbiota already existing therein, and those are really the 2 that I I want to emphasize the most, is these 2, because you can start your bin and really jumpstart it when you use brown materials that already have, spores, fungal spores, or microbes living in them already. And again, not to say that there are not microbes that are going to be on cardboard. Obviously, cardboard goes through the mail and things like that. So it's going to, it's going to have microbes on it. But because of the processing, etc., I'm going to be moving away from cardboard and more toward using some of these natural brown materials in our worm bins. So I'm pretty excited about that. Obviously, it means I'm going to have to be more intentional about getting a lot of leaves in the fall. And the beautiful thing about the wood chips is that you can actually get them for free through a service called Chip Drop. That's actually how I got these wood chips here. And it was actually a huge pile. This is actually just a very, very small portion of that pile. And it's slightly damp right now, which is why it's so dark, because it drizzled a little bit recently. But having Chip Drop means that you can actually get a lot of wood chips, which can be really helpful in an operation if you're trying to feed a number of worm bins or have the brown materials for a number of worm bins. Now, one con of chip drop obviously is that you can't get these whenever you want to. They're going to just be available whenever you're able to partner with an arborist in the area. So that's that about the availability of the wood chips, unless you happen to know someone else who's chipping wood or you happen to have a wood chipper yourself. That's something to keep in mind there. With regard to the leaves, you can pretty much expect those you can expect those in the fall, and you can expect them every fall, pretty seasonally. If you drive your neighborhood, you'll probably see many people putting leaves out, and you just go pick them up. And then with this coffee chaff, I have an arrangement where I'm able to pick that up on a regular basis, so that's been a big blessing to me. And if you have a roaster in the area, definitely call them up and see what they do with their coffee chaff. But for me, it's been a nice material. I will acknowledge that you're going to have to water this pretty heavily in order to keep it moist, and or you're going to have to water it pretty regularly. Rather, I don't think heavily is the right word. It's not very absorbent, so you're not going to actually have to use a lot of water to saturate it. But in order to keep it moist, you're probably going to have to check on it to keep it at the same moisture level you would ideally have if you were, for example, using something like cardboard, which I think is a lot easier to manage the moisture level of. With wood chips as well, I think you'll have to water those pretty intentionally as well. They do hold moisture, which is nice. But it's somewhat limited. So they're not the most absorbent. Now, if they're allowed to soak, they can definitely pull in a little bit more moisture, but they're not going to just drink it up in a short period of time. So those are some considerations for your brown materials. As you're putting them in your worm bin, you know, in some cases you might decide to mix materials, and I think that's one place where leaves mixed with wood chips could be really nice, because you're going to have more breakdown of the leaves, which is going to allow for maybe a little bit more granular brown materials, especially as the leaves break down. Whereas it might take more time for the wood chips to break down, and that's okay. You know, that might allow for more fungal growth in the bin, which is nice. It's nice to be able to encourage good fungal growth. And then the chaff, the jury is still out on exactly how that works within the bin. Like I mentioned, I've tried it, and so far it's been pretty good. I haven't had really any problems, but I haven't seen it done wide scale. So please follow the channel, subscribe if you are interested in seeing this chaff in use, because I'm definitely using it in more and more of my bins. So again, thank you for this, going through this little survey of the brown materials with me. And one question that I have for you as the listener or as the viewer, what brown materials do you use? Do you use or prefer any of the ones that I've mentioned? And what do you see as being the pros or the cons of the materials that you utilize? Are there any that I don't have here that you use? And why do you prefer those? I'd love it if you could drop those in the comments. Who knows, maybe I'll end up adding something to the repertoire that I do not currently have. So again, you know, if you're making a meal, you need to know what ingredients you have available to you. And these are the ingredients as far as the browns that I utilize or have utilized. And like I mentioned to you, really thinking about getting rid of the cardboard in our lineup and really sticking with the other materials. So you'll get to see us put that into action here soon, I hope. But without further ado, we will see you in the next one.